Hello, English literature students. This is a PowerPoint lecture on the minor characters in The Importance of Being Earnest. Okay, so we're going to start with the character Miss Prism. We don't meet her till Act 2. Her name is a pun on the word misprision, which is a word that means mistaking one thing for another, a misunderstanding or a mistake. And it was quite a common thing to do in early comedies, and by early comedies, I guess I'm talking about the 17th and the 18th century, where characters, particularly minor characters, would have a name that just reflected what was their comic flaw or their one main characteristic. So Wilde is having fun with that with Miss Prism, I think. Miss Prism is a stereotype of a governess. I've put negative in. You know, she can be played sympathetically, but there are things about her character that do fit the idea that governesses were old, mean, not jolly people. And a governess, it was one of the few respectable professions for poor but middle-class women. Often in 19th century fiction, the figure of the governess will occur. And if you've ever read any Brontes, you'll often have the figure of the governess, and the Bronte sisters themselves worked as governesses. It was not a happy job. But Wilde's not interested in that. Wilde's got an aristocratic view of things, and he's quite happy to mock the governess. She's also a negative stereotype of a sort of moralist. She's a mouthpiece for conventional Victorian morality. Miss Prism, when you look at how she speaks in a highly formal manner, and she speaks sententiously, which is a long and big word, but it means she's always making these sort of moral judgments. Everything she says sounds like a big judgment from on high. There's a suggestion that she is active in the pursuit of Rev Chasuble. The desperate spinster is a well-worn, if misogynistic, figure of fun. Okay, so it's another way in which Miss Prism may not be the kindest character, that we are being encouraged to laugh at this woman and her desire to get married to Dr. Chasuble. Wilde also uses her to mock the conventions of the well-made play. Okay, so if you remember when we learnt about the well-made play as a genre, one of the key characters, the key figures in a well-made play is a woman with a past. Now, it's funny that this figure should be Miss Prism, because in the well-made play, the woman with a past was often fascinating, dangerous, exciting. You know, Miss Prism is none of these things. And hilariously, in this burlesque manner, her past indiscretion is not a sexual falling. It's not that she has, you know, had an affair outside of marriage or something. What she's done is this terribly comic act of swapping a baby for a manuscript. She puts the manuscript in the bassinet like a pram, and she put the baby in her handbag, which is very funny. Another minor character is the Reverend Chasuble, DD. That's how he's named in the cast list. DD, I think it stands for Doctor of Divinity. I'm pretty certain I looked that up. So he's got all these titles. He's a learned man, and that's his main characteristic that Wilde brings out. He's a stereotype of a sort of bumbling scholar. So he's a man who is very learned in a very narrow way. He's often making references to obscure religious ideas and also allusions to the classical authors. He's used by Wilde to poke fun at the Church of England as a sort of very ineffectual way of dealing with people and their morals. He's less judgmental than Miss Prism. Every time I say one of these things, I want to give you the evidence, but I know my task is that I'm going to ask you to find the evidence, okay? So I'm just saying them. He's less judgmental than Miss Prism. He is unmarried, but Wilde does make it clear that he likes Miss Prism. And at the end, he declares his feelings for her to make the full happy ending. And then the other minor characters, and here we're thinking about characters who have a speech or have a name, so they're on stage a fair bit. Now I'm just talking about servants on stage generally, and then we'll talk about the specific servants in this play. So in real life, servants are or were a sign of status and wealth. You couldn't be a lady or a gentleman without at least one servant. And there are lots of sort of Victorian jokes about the poor old maid of all work. If all you could afford was one servant, it was a maid of all work. And that was a heck of a job because you had to do all the cleaning and the cooking, and you know, that was grim. In comedy, the role of the master and the servant is often inverted. Okay, so in real life, the master should be the one with authority, the servant should be the one who's not so clever and does what he's told. In productions, servants are often used as a chorus because they react to what is happening on stage in a way reflecting what the audience might be thinking and feeling. Servants are often present in scenes even though they don't speak. And that adds to the humour because the upper classes have to maintain this artificial appearance of manners in front of them. So that's often why servants are on stage, to allow for this humour to come across. So you can have more servants than are named. Yeah, and I think there are other servants referred to. There are footmen, there are people bringing tea and cake and things. Lane and Merriman are our named servants, and they add to the symmetry of the play. Each gentleman has a manservant, although obviously Lane and Algy have a much sort of closer relationship. Merriman is the servant, you know, Cecily also gets to give Merriman orders. Lane is given the same dry wit as his employer and the same cynical attitude to marriage. Lane's drinking of Algy's wine reflects common upper-class complaints about servants' dishonesty. Both Lane and Merriman remain calm and carry out their duties in the face of their employer's ludicrous behaviour, which adds comedy. And their performances can add humour through facial expressions and actions, even without lines. So if you think about Merriman, if you read the play, it's easy to forget he's there or he's a character. But when he's performed, he has much more of a presence because he's on stage a lot of the time in some of the funniest scenes, particularly the scene between Gwendolyn and Cecily. So he can make that performance very funny by how he reacts to what's happening. So these are the tasks. If you are a year one student, these are your tasks over Easter, which is to make notes on each character slide, finding textual evidence and quotes for each bullet point, except for the one that says servants. Yeah, don't worry about that one because that was just an overview of servants in comedy plays generally. Just make the notes on Lane and Merriman, please. Then if you're a second year, you have done one of task 2. You might want to do the rest. But if you are a first year student, I would like you to do one of those task 2s. Okay, draw a family tree for Lady and Lord Bracknell. You can only do this once you finish the whole play, obviously, because that's when everything comes out. Lady Bracknell's sister and husband, Algy and Jack. Or draw a chart representing the love relationships in the play. Nice. And you could do it with, you could do it with the progress of those love relationships. What stops them, how they get together. Yeah. Draw a chart showing the social hierarchy of characters in the play. That'd be quite nice. Or create a diagram showing the different relationships between all the characters, all the named characters. Yeah. So you somehow put all the named characters on a piece of paper and then draw all their relationships between each other. This work can be digital or real. You can submit a picture of your work to me, like a photograph is what I'm saying, or you can make it online. Okay, as usual, any problems, just email or chat me and I can help you with that. Thank you all.